I am the Inquisitor. Welcome.
Revenge does wonders for the will to live, don't you think?
There are some things far more frightening than death.
What's up, Meta Nerds? This video will present the complete life of the Grand Inquisitor, putting everything from comics, shows, and books into chronological order, with links in the description to cover any additional info that may come out over time. We'll be going from his childhood in the Jedi Temple, rise to become the greatest Jedi hunter under Vader, and his lingering presence in the Force beyond death. 15 years before the invasion of Naboo, circa the year 47 BBY, a Pa'auan boy was born in his species' homeworld of UDIBLE. Those people were not known for a particular affinity in the Force. They did have a deep history in the Jedi Order, with rumors of underwater ponds with miraculous healing properties, and tales that the first Jedi Temple was actually here on UDIBLE, not on Tython or Ahch-To. It is unknown who discovered his Force sensitivity. His world was not a member of the Republic, and thus would not have been a part of the midichlorian detecting database that scanned the blood tests given to all Republic citizens. But since UDIBLE was one of the largest port worlds in the Outer Rim, they were not as cut off and remote as some of their neighbor worlds, and his people would have certainly known about the Jedi, as some were bound to be passing through from time to time. Likely before the age of 3, he said goodbye to his family and was swept up into the whirlwind of a life that was becoming a Jedi in the bustling galactic capital. His masters would discern that this boy was best suited for life as a temple guard, a position that was one of the most hallowed callings in the entire order. The Jedi Order had a lot of different roles other than the warrior knight. There were those whose path in the Force would lead them into things that looked more like a university, with Jedi biologists, astronomers, and historians, just about anything the secular citizens would study. There were Jedi that worked alongside schools all across the galaxy, while of course also having the peacekeepers that had to act more like a military branch. While the life of a Jedi Temple guard may not seem as glorious, the Jedi knew that it was one of the most important and noble, a life of extreme devotion rivaled only by those that sat on the High Council. In the late Republic era, the Guard was led by Sindralig, and they were responsible for protecting this font of wisdom that kept the entire galaxy out of the Dark Ages, being the repository for all that knowledge accumulated by the countless Jedi of those research fields, along with all the training grounds, holocrons with the personal wisdom of the great Jedi of the past, not to mention the enormous vaults with hidden and invaluable treasures, objects soaked in Jedi history and light side energy, along with those dark side infused amulets and weapons sealed deep inside the temple. The temple that over thousands of years of their history had only received a serious attack a handful of times. With this incomparable responsibility came a practice exclusive to their fold. As Captain of the Guard Colombo Ree stated, quote, "A temple guard's mask and robes confer anonymity and symbolize emotional detachment. During guard service, you surrender your identity, your weapon, and everything else. Only your commitment to the Order remains." The guards worked as a sort of check and balances within the Order. And while it is unclear how Sindralig led this branch, or what system was in place to override his suggestion for temple security, there are countless times where a guard would deny access to even the leader of the High Council. Another sort of branch within the temple was the Jedi Archives, where the leader, at this time Jocasta Nu, could discern who had access to what, an incredibly frustrating roadblock to countless Jedi, who were denied access to certain historical records or writings on more esoteric principles, especially anything concerning the dark side. This Pa'auan guard noticed his frustration at Nu turned into hatred that he described as, quote, unbecoming of a Jedi. He felt that perhaps because of his more austere warrior monk path, he was not allowed the same freedom in the archives as one who was on a more academic path. She always lurked over his shoulders and prevented him from all but the most basic texts on the light side, and light side only. He would never see combat on the battlefronts of the Clone Wars, but was intimate with how this war was degenerating the Order and the Republic. While standing at rigid attention staring forward through his mask of anonymity, he likely heard Jedi discuss the moral questions raised by this war. And it was the guards that faced off against Coruscanti protesters that were increasingly gathered outside the temple, hoping to turn the Jedi generals against the Republic military leadership, and many of their points against the Jedi hypocrisy rang true. Dooku, of course, had abandoned the Order, was leading the war against the Republic, a Republic that all agreed was corrupt to some extent. And during the war, Pong Krell would turn against his brethren as well, and in 19 BBY, the Jedi Temple was bombed. The Pa'auan and all the other guards were put on high alert, Sindralig knowing this failure would go down as one of the few incidents like it in the millennia of the temple. And while some were being hardened in their orthodoxy, their certainty that the Jedi were the only hope left for the galaxy, in a world where politicians and people were straying from the light, perhaps the Jedi would have to step in and act as a benevolent dictatorship. He wouldn't know it, but this was the most subtle trick of the dark side. To have the light act like the dark to fight the dark. Not caring who brought about the outcome it wanted, only caring about that outcome. Power concentrated in the hands of a few, so that the dark side could focus all of its efforts on them. Jedi failsafes always understood that they could be corrupted too, and that was why the checks and balances were in place. That the idea of a good dictator was a false promise planted by the dark side. But despite this ancient wisdom, the temple guards were hearing this idea being proposed more and more. When they found evidence that Ahsoka Tano, the Padawan of the man believed to be the Chosen One, was behind the bombing that killed 8 clones, 12 civilian crew, and 6 Jedi, the entire order was shaken. He was one of the guards that escorted Ahsoka to the trial, that was itself proof of the order losing its way. A matter that normally would have been handled internally was pushed into the realm of the military court, because their religious order had so intertwined itself with secular political power. He stood there with his double-bladed saber, knowing that his lifetime of training would be used to force this Jedi Padawan to comply with the court process. And though Ahsoka would be exonerated, he felt that the truth was even worse. The real bomber was still a Jedi, and a close friend of Ahsoka, Barriss Offee. When she was dragged into court, all knew that her lament contained a lot of truth.
That we've so lost our way that we have become villains in this conflict. That we are the ones that should be put on trial. All of us!
On top of this, he would learn that Ahsoka had decided to leave the Order due to her abandonment by the only family she had ever known. This had sent his mind spiraling towards the dark. Seeing this hallowed institution dedicated to the light was inept at everything it did. It did not train its members in the deep mysteries. It allowed for arrogant egos to become dictators of the library. They gave up principles to fight a war and weren't powerful enough to win it. They were fighting a fallen Jedi who would cause more Jedi to step away from the Order in these 3 years than they had seen in the previous hundreds of years combined. And they were further abandoning their principles, entertaining the idea of becoming benevolent dictators. When Order 66 was given, the clones came for him too, and he likely called on these long-repressed dark side powers to secure his escape. The details are still unclear, but he may have seen Anakin firsthand slaughtering younglings, or may have seen the holo recording Kenobi and Yoda later witnessed, or could have went to Palpatine directly, either knowing that he was the secret Sith the Order had been worried about, or just to warn him of the Jedi takeover. Seeing the dead bodies of Jedi Masters and the deformed robed man, he may have kneeled to Sidious in the same spot as Vader. Because we do know that Darth Sidious personally selected him, and dubbed him the Grand Inquisitor of his Jedi hunting Inquisitorius. And with this new title, of this new order, he was granted full freedom to explore the Jedi archives, to indulge in the ancient hidden secrets of the dark side, and use their history and mission reports to hunt down fellow Order 66 survivors. Shortly after this, the Grand Inquisitor would return to the temple, exuding dark-side anger and cloaked in dark robes. Moving towards the library, he is met by a monument to his former life, a display of the full temple guard regalia, saying to himself, quote, I remember lies. Making his way through the halls that had the youngling blood washed away, he arrived in the hallowed halls. No one could deny him now, but he did sense a strange presence. Spinning to meet the voice that corrected him, a dark figure ignited its crimson blade, but he revealed his own new blade. This would be the first fight to showcase the unique blade of the Inquisitorius, only igniting a single blade for now, leaping to engage, before being slammed by this mysterious attacker, and when he re-engages, the Grand Inquisitor is sure that this being is here to steal Jedi secrets. Raising his weapon to activate the second blade, and engage the spinning feature that would have intimidated nearly all opponents. And it seemed to be working as this Darksider was being pushed back, even knocked down, prompting him to call out, and now, you fool, I have you. But the attacker was simply testing the capabilities of his new cybernetic suit. With a precise move, he destroys the Inquisitor's blade by slashing it from the center out, and disarmed, he fell to the ground pleading to know who this cyborg was. But the attacker was silent, and after this short stint in the dark side, he thought that he was about to share the fate of most who followed this path. To have the last thing they see be the crimson blade slashing down at them. It was only a command from their shared master that saved his life. As Darth Sidious stepped forward to introduce the Grand Inquisitor to Darth Vader, and the man who only recently abandoned the light, who likely had no deep knowledge of the Sith, was confused why a master would sick his servants on each other. Sidious corrects him that Vader serves the Empire, and while he is still confused and frustrated by this seeming betrayal, his master assures him that this was a valuable lesson, but makes sure that he understands that the Inquisitorius is under the command of the Sith. Vader is confused about this title as well, and Sidious takes them both away to a secret building in the works industrial district, explaining to Vader that the Inquisitorius was always a part of his grand design, and he had already gathered former slaves of the light, freeing them in the dark side to become Jedi hunters. The Inquisitor leapt down into the training pit, ordering his agents to form up. The 6th brother, 5th brother, 7th sister, 8th brother, and 9th sister. And as he explains to them that Vader too will be considered their master, the Dark Lord asks Sidious if this Padawan would have replaced him as his apprentice if he had lost that battle in the archives. His Lord leaves it open, asking him if there was any chance of this happening. That surely Vader sensed the weakness in the rival, that all these fallen Jedi needed intensive training to be forged into the Emperor's blade that would once and for all eliminate the Jedi, as he knew these few embers of light could burn down their glorious empire. Over the next days, Vader would personally help train these forces, ending one lesson with severing the arm of the 6th brother. The Grand Inquisitor protested this action, but Vader assures him that this would teach him loss, and that he would never forget this lesson. Nor would any of the others who suffered injuries ranging from a loss of a hand to life-threatening injuries requiring medical droid intervention. As he critiques this style, the Sith explains that he needs to correct an error in Jedi military doctrine. The fools thought that if they survived, the battle could be considered a victory. Now, the only measure of success would be if the target died. Vader turns to the GI to emphasize that even this AUDIBLE had this fault, that he needed to be more ruthless and willing to sacrifice his life and the lives of his agents, going on to add that anyone that did not improve would be eliminated, and confirms the GI's questions that yes, he did see them all as pathetic and unnecessary, but that they could change, that all things are possible through the Force. After just talking down to the Darksider, Vader is humbled and taken aback when the GI is not surprised by the list of surviving Jedi. In fact, he says he has had access to this list for some time, and he thought it was odd that Jocasta Nu was such a high priority target, an elderly woman with no combat experience that he was aware of. Surely there were bigger threats, to which the apprentice says that their job is not to question, but to carry out orders. When they landed at the lifeless Jedi Temple, he goes on to complain about Jocasta, remembering all the ways he was slighted by her, that she was elitist in her dispensing of knowledge, that from her place of ease and comfort she looked down on the warriors that faced the real world. Whether it be the protesting masses outside the temple, or the mindless murdering droids of the battlefront. Once they enter the library, he goes on and on about how he finally will have unrestricted access to everything. It was a dream come true, a dream that he knew could never be afforded to him. Even some Jedi Masters were restricted in some ways, but through the dark side, nothing would be denied to him. The Sith could sense the eagerness for knowledge overshadowing the mission, to focus only on intel that could reveal where Jocasta Nu was hiding, and he assured his master, quote, "Don't worry, Vader, I've waited my whole life for this." As he began his research, Vader returned to the Emperor's office, where he asked why Nu was so important. Sidious explained that she was one of the most arrogant of all the Jedi, symbolic of the Order's hubris, to deem themselves as the true vanguards of the Force, taking over temples from other orders, and locking away the ancient artifacts and teachings of the Sith. Perhaps Sidious needed access to something already hidden by her, or hoped to turn this caretaker of the legacy of the Jedi. It would be both a very practical and symbolic turn to the dark side. And so he gives orders that she must be taken in alive. The GI believed that he sat alone in the entire building, once bustling with life from hundreds of different species. It was now just him, their ghosts, and ironically, the staring faces on the sculptures of the Lost 20, those who had abandoned the Order. He was unaware that Jocasta had snuck into the temple and was collecting records, and speaking with her droid assistant Kator, who assures her that everything was still in good order. She gathers the database of every Force-sensitive child identified, and as she was leaving, she tells herself not to get into a fight with the Dark Jedi, but snaps when she sees just how disrespectful he was to the records. She ignites her blade and demands he not touch her books. He developed a devilish grin, and asked how she could not recognize him. After all those self-righteous denials of access, she didn't even know who he was. She was about to strike him down as a traitor, but he calmly responds, "Perhaps you have not heard, Master Archivist. These days, the Jedi are the traitors." Meeting her blade in a flash, at the sight of the red blade she screams out Sith, but he corrects her. Not yet, perhaps never, but close enough. He was calling on the dark side, and a term more common during the Old Republic era was a Dark Jedi, one raised as a Jedi, but fallen and calling on the dark for power. Of all the Jedi to fight, his fury towards her made him more powerful in ways than he had ever felt before, saying that the void he felt in the Order had now been filled with the dark. She hits him with a force blast and explains that the mysteries were too complex and dangerous. It was her duty to make sure that Jedi did not engage in things that they couldn't understand, things that were working to corrupt them. He rises to say that she no longer had any duties, that nothing could stop him, and reveals that he used to dream of killing her. Even as a Jedi, he would have thoughts of overpowering her, slaughtering her here in this temple, but he knew that the other Jedi would stop him. But now the Jedi were dead, and now she would join them. This moment felt even better than he dreamed of. But the saber was stopped by a second red blade. In his rage, the Inquisitor accuses Vader of treason, that perhaps his loyalty could not be trusted. The Sith says that he does not require trust, only obedience, but they are both bombarded by books rocketing at them by Nu's use of the Force. She regained her saber and raced up to a higher level. Vader taunts her by calling her a Sith, as arrogant Jedi like her played a powerful role in destroying the Jedi Order. But as he pursues, she was busy deleting the archives, and the only piece of intel that she retained was the list of Force sensitives. But everything else, all those eons of information, were erased by her hands, something she would have thought impossible mere months ago. She tells the Sith Lord that she was all that was left, and when her droid defender steps forward, he biometrically scans the cyborg and is able to identify him as Anakin Skywalker, ordering him to stay out of the vault. Though he would be brutally beaten to scrap, he bought enough time for Nu to insert her saber into an ancient Jedi rifle, a device that turned the blade into a blaster, one far more powerful than the things of this age. Even when deflected, it melted clear through several walls. As she lined up her next shot, the weapon malfunctioned, ejecting the melted saber, and Vader promised her that he was not there to kill her. As the weapon continued to overheat, she forced it towards the Sith, and a split second later a massive explosion blew out an opening of the temple walls. She would pull an ancient blade that, as the Force would have it, was similar in style to the Inquisitors. Then, leaping down to engage the troopers, she was quickly met by reinforcements via LAATLE gunships, and the sheer volume of bolts got through, striking the blade and sending it falling down to the lower levels. She accepted her death and prepared to be one with the Force, stepping off the cliff, only to feel the dark side envelop her, as Vader lifted her back to be detained. They found the data crystal, and now a Dark Lord of the Sith was scanning through the names of all known Force-sensitive children. Jocasta pointed out that this list was clearly to be used to find Vader's replacement, and when the troopers wanted to stun her, she revealed that they were being led by a Jedi, that this was Anakin Skywalker. When they turned to look at the cyborg, he instantly kills them with a force blast that sent each clone flying out of the transport. As the ship dropped down, he left her in restraints to die in the fiery crash. Looking into the wreckage, he contacts Sidious, who asks if he learned anything from her before her death. Vader destroyed the data crystal and lied to his Sith master, one of his first acts of defiance, and a perfect example of how the light always finds a way to defeat the dark. In his jealous craving of power, Vader, of all people, had just ensured the safety of countless Force-sensitive younglings. This loss of intel would also hurt the Inquisitor's mission, and push him to work other routes, fuming at the fact that at the end of it all, the librarian had found a way to deny him access to the Jedi secrets, even after the fall of the Jedi Order. She denied him the promise that Sidious offered, something that helped push him to accept the dark. Like Vader, almost immediately, he was robbed of one of the main reasons he abandoned the light. But he was tenacious and would funnel his fury towards fulfilling his master's commands. Targeting orphanages, he was eventually able to pick up on Force sensitivity in some, and take them to a secret location where they would undergo intensive psychological and physical manipulation in order to make them slaves to the dark. Eventually, this system would grow to where Sidious had these beings placed strategically throughout the galaxy, working as Force beacons to sense any nearby presence in the Force. Though this was successful for a time, he would suffer two losses, one to a Padawan, and another to a young Jedi named Kira Ventala, someone who the Grand Inquisitor remembered as a particularly weak Jedi from the temple. He admitted it was disturbing to see the ways the light was filling new vessels with unexpected power. In 18 BBY, he would assign the sixth brother to hunt down a lead on a Force user old enough to be a Jedi, who was spotted on the farming moon of Raeda. He was eager to hunt her himself, but Sidious assigned him to other tasks. None of them knew the importance of this short lead, that this Jedi was in fact Ahsoka Tano, the only Jedi on par with those like Yoda and Kenobi. The sixth brother was defeated, and worse, this Jedi survivor was able to organize a farmers' revolt here and temporarily push back Imperial forces. She and many leaders of this rebellion escaped, and the moon was obliterated by myriad Imperial weapons.
The Grand Inquisitor stood in the smoking fields that had once been the pride of the farming moon of Raeda, and glared at the ground. Everything was gone.
Again, his Sith master would deny the pursuit of this lead, pulled to other tasks in the Inquisitorius, but he did admire the work of this Jedi.
He had come to see someone's work, to learn what she was capable of when pushed, to see how far she would go for her goals. In spite of himself, he was impressed.
Around this same time, Vader had called lower-level Inquisitors to assist him in the capture of Eth Koth. The man begged Vader to leave him, that he was no longer a Jedi, and that today he had become a father. Vader killed him, and the Inquisitor let the mother and child escape into a transport, only to force-pull the newborn into her arms. Just because doing this would be an even more cruel way to steal her baby. To let her have a glimmer of joy and hope, only to snuff it out. When Vader returned to the Inquisitorius headquarters in the Works District, the GI complimented the Sith, and he returned by complimenting the proficiency of the Inquisitors. And as the child was given to a pair of nursemaids, he took a more serious turn and asked Vader to speak with him alone. Moving into the strategy room, he shows Vader a list of the remaining survivors of Order 66, including Yoda, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Oppo Rancisis, and Coleman Kadge. Bad news was that there were no leads whatsoever, and the only thing that they could do was hope to keep stealing children, and force the Jedi survivors to intervene. When the Sith departed, the GI meets with his team, engaging in a bonding ritual of taking a drink local to the area of their latest Jedi kill, while two lower-ranking Inquisitors discuss their future in the Inquisitorius. What would happen once all the Jedi were gone? Vader ambushes them, and out of nowhere his saber swings for the female's head. The male Twi'lek intercepts, proving that he had formed an unhealthy bond, something Vader says should have been lost after seeing the fate of Eth Koth's family. To set an example, the Inquisitor's head was smashed into the wall before letting the man run for his life. Instead of being angry, the Grand Inquisitor knew to respect the chain of command, and simply asks how he can be of service. Vader said he would take care of it himself, and moments later he used the Force to guide the lovers' blades into each other. This twisted attack stemmed from his suspicions that the female was a traitor, only grabbing Eth Koth's child after being detected, and the male's feelings meant that they would soon turn against them. In his reckless pursuit, he sent a pair of speeders crashing down into a park, killing a senator that Palpatine had sunk countless hours into trying to make her a strong ally. The Lord of the Sith was livid, and declared that Vader would still lead the Inquisitorius, but not on his world, not on the capital of the Empire. And it is in this same conversation that Vader would deny an offer to make Naboo or Tatooine his personal throne world, instead choosing Mustafar. Vader's fortress would be raised here on this fiery world, and on its water moon by the name of Nur, Sidious would order the construction of Fortress Inquisitorius. This enormous structure would descend 4,380 meters below the ocean surface and 840 meters above, a total of 3¼ miles long. This would be the hub of all efforts to extinguish the Jedi once and for all throughout the galaxy. It was all shielded and protected by an array of sensors and turrets, patrolled by both droid and organic guards, housing everything from research wings extensive enough to in a way become a new archives, as the intel gathered here would be on everything about Jedi history, including important locations and individuals, any artifacts rounded up that could be stored here, artifacts from all sorts of Force faiths, anything that could be used by the Inquisitors to pick up on the Jedi's connection and location. There was also an incredibly extensive detention level for prisoners both Force sensitive and not, as anyone who came in contact with a Jedi possessed intel that could lead to their capture. And if they resisted, or even if they couldn't consciously recall this intel, they had a torture wing killed with every kind of droid, weapon, and chemical that might extract what the Inquisitor wanted. This torture chamber was also the new location for flipping Jedi to the dark side, and used to continue Project Harvester. Children from all across the galaxy experienced unimaginable horrors in these underwater dungeons. Sidious would personally design these sections, meant to replace the Citadel as the most secure prison in existence.
But at the Citadel, breaking Jedi is our specialty. Within these walls, they will learn to fear us. And if not, they die.
As each room or section could be flooded individually, or the entire fortress could be submerged if there was a prisoner that they simply couldn't let escape, someone that was too dangerous to be left alive. And for those that were captured dead or died in custody, they would be stored in the Jedi tombs, preserved for horrendous purposes Darth Sidious had not yet revealed. Perhaps a secret cloning project, picking up on the aims of his old master Darth Plagueis, who worked tirelessly but could never perfect the art of cloning Force sensitives. One of those preserved corpses was of Turba Sinube, a man that once helped Ahsoka navigate the underworld on Coruscant and retrieve her blades, while the other bodies ranged from masters to younglings. By 14 BBY, the Grand Inquisitor was informed of an attack on an Imperial refinery on Kashyyyk, carried out by the Partisans, a group led by Clone Wars hero Saw Gerrera, and reports showed that a young Jedi survivor, Cal Kestis, got involved. The Ninth Sister hoped to secure a Jedi corpse for her master.
I told the Grand Inquisitor you wouldn't be stupid enough to show your face here again.
But in her pain and desperation after losing her hand in this battle, she gives us a look into the horrors the Grand Inquisitor inflicted on his agents.
When you've already lost yourself, a limb's easy. It'd be fun to bring you in. Watch you rot like the rest of us! Just wait till the isolation, torture, mutilation, and your threats!
Fortress Inquisitorius would continue in this role for the next 4 years, and in 10 BBY, the GI would lead the search for the Jedi track to Tatooine, a story we will conclude in Part 2, taking us from the hunt for Order 66 survivors to hunting Force-sensitive children born during the Imperial era, and Darth Sidious' ultimate goal of snuffing out every expression of the light side. But we'll also see the ultimate fate of the Grand Inquisitor. Throughout this series, you'll hear a lot of clips from audiobooks, all brought to us by Audible, the sponsor of this video. Now is a great time to use the 1-month free trial to pick up some of the greatest Star Wars material ever produced. From Legends classics that stretch back to the time of the Old Republic with Revan and Bane, Republic and Clone Wars era essentials like Plagueis and Shatterpoint, or post-Endor and into the New Republic era with the original Thrawn trilogy. All on Audible with countless other Legends titles, and of course all the new canon stuff as well. The audiobooks with the excellent narration and ambient sounds really bring you into the story, and allow for much more unique experiences, and deeper lore than things like shows and movies can provide. Sign up today to receive 1 month free, giving you access to their entire Plus catalog, containing everything from podcasts, fitness, meditation, and sleep aids, on top of their library of thousands of audiobooks from every subject you can think of. If you love it like I do and stay on past the free trial, every month you get 1 credit to put towards any title you want. You can listen on PC or mobile, with great features like bookmarking and note-taking, and all your credits roll over if you don't use them. You keep these credits even if you cancel, and all titles that you pick up are yours to keep forever. I've been a paying customer of Audible for around a decade now, and new members can try Audible for free for 30 days. Visit audible.com/metanerds, or text metanerds to 500-500. The best way to help me out is to hit that like button, comment or share this video, and subscribe if you want to see more. Check out the links in the description, and special shout out to our $25 tier supporter, Oscar Jones. But most important of all, remember, the dark side never follows through on its promises, and the Force will be with you always.